That's a longer intro than I originally remember when I made it. So whatever. Gives people a chance to make sure they get on live. We are live. Dominic, how you doing, man?
Absolutely fantastic. How you doing, Joe?
Good. Hey, before we really get into the nuts and bolts, I'd like to give everybody a chance if they don't obviously know who you are and kind of your backstory. I'd like to turn it over to you in the beginning and give you a shot to talk about that so everybody understands why is Dominic on Windshield Time.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
And again, congratulations to you and everything you're doing. So the channel is impacting a lot of people, empowering a lot of people. I personally take away a lot of value from it because I'm always a student as much as I am a trainer and teacher. So great job on everything you're doing. So
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And so I entered the industry in 2010 for a small little company some people may have heard of called Mad City Roofing, Siding, and Windows. And I started out as an outside salesperson. I actually got a business degree from UW-Whitewater right here in Wisconsin, D3 business school. And like many, I graduated from college not having any clue what the heck I was going to do with my life. So it was actually my mother that gave me the idea. She's like, you should look to be an estimator for a construction company. Because my father owned a demolition company all throughout my childhood, very much was big into physical labor, pretty much had a sledgehammer in my hand ever since I could walk. And I had a very good knowledge background in construction and, deconstruction, as it turns out. But she's like, you take your business degree and being an estimator for a construction company, they make good money, and then you're not having to do the physical labor. So I literally went online and I started doing research, estimator construction. And seemingly by fate, by accident, I came across this ad for Mad City, and it was titled A Rare Opportunity. And it was basically giving in-home estimates in the construction space, quote unquote, but in-home estimates and home improvements. And one thing I learned about myself when I was in college, I suck at taking tests. Admittedly, I was in the 50% of my class, to me the top 50% possible. But I was always good at giving presentations. So anytime I got up in front of the class, it was delivering a presentation, I always excelled. And then I really struggled at taking tests. So this ad was really intriguing to me because it's like, okay, it's in construction. It's in the home remodeling space. I know construction. And it was giving in-home presentations, right? I'm like, I can do that. And then I saw the income potential. You can make over $100,000 your first year. And coming fresh out of college, that seemed like $1 million. I'm like, that doesn't even seem real. So just, on a whim, I called the number on the ad. I talked to this amazing woman named Leanna, and she was just a powerhouse on the phone, one of the most talented individuals you ever meet in terms of selling on the phone. And she really sold me on the opportunity and thankfully got me set up with an interview with Nathan Richmond, who's currently the president of Mad City. And the rest is history. So I got into there, introduced myself, had no sales experience, by the way, zero. Didn't know the first thing about sales, could not close the door with the wind behind me. But thankfully, Mad City had just introduced the Grosso 10-step selling system. Because Mad City, before I got there, before Nathan got there, they were very much a storm restoration company, doing a lot of insurance work, roofing. And they were very much order taking. They were leaving quotes in the mailbox. There was no method of the madness, selling on price. And the company was on the verge of going bankrupt. Thankfully, Nathan, when he first came there, he brought with him, because he was a student of Rick Grosso in his previous life, he brought with him the Grosso system. And I was thankfully to be one of the first classes to get trained on this new program. Now, Rick always explained his system is a paint by numbers system. So have you ever done a paint by numbers before, Joe?
No, maybe I have, but I don't know.
So my wife and I occasionally will do a paint by numbers. So essentially you got a blank canvas, or on the canvas, it's got a picture of something, but it's pretty much.
Okay.
And then you get your numbers. It's like, let's just say 1 through 10, the different colors of paint. As long as you can follow basic instructions and put the right number with the right number on the canvas, just match it, you can create masterpieces, even if you're not a natural born artist. And for me, that's what Rick Grosso's sales system was, because I'm not a natural born salesperson in any stretch of the imagination. I was very much trained to be good by following this paint by numbers system. So it makes performance and success replicatable and duplicatable, just like that paint by numbers. So long story short, I learned the system. I went through the training, and I got out there and I closed my first 7 sales in a row, not having a clue what I was even doing. And I was robotic to a fault. I was like, John and Mary, that was step 1, the intro. Let me go on to step 2 now, the needs assessment and or survey. So I was robotic to a fault and systematic to a fault, but it was working. So after closing 7 sales in a row, I started looking at the commission, which could be bad. But I started calculating my commission. I'm like, oh my God. And I started thinking, what if I could do that every week? What if I could do that all month long? What if I could do that throughout the year? And then I started quantifying, setting some goals for income. And the numbers I was coming up with were just beyond my comprehension. I'm like, I could literally make a fortune doing this. So it became an obsession for me early on to master this thing and learn it forwards and backwards so I can do it in my sleep. And essentially in my first 6 months on the job, I sold $900,000 in replacement windows. That's what we started off with, is selling replacement windows, and became the first salesman of the year, then became the first multi-million-dollar producer. But as I was growing in sales, one thing I've always had a passion for is teaching. So before I was ever promoted to a sales trainer and sales leader, I always loved coaching salespeople because, of course, when you're the top dog, you get a lot of attention. Everyone's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm like, I am doing what I was told to do. Like,
yeah, right.
I'm training book, right? So I got a lot of attention, and then more people started to embrace the system in the company. And I would invite people to ride along with me. We'd sit down, we'd role play different things. So I think about the Brian Tracy quote often is like, be the kind of leader that others will follow voluntarily, even if you have no title or position. And that's kind of the way I was, is I love leading by example. I love teaching and coaching. So for me, after my 3rd salesman of the year, it was a natural evolution for me to get into actually coaching and training the team. And at that time, we were about a $7 million company. And between 2012 and 2019, we grew that team from 7 million to about 100 million. So I got a lot of experience. Believe me, made a lot of mistakes, a lot of trial and error. I was proud to build Wisconsin's largest adult daycare center, right?
So true.
One of the achievements of my life. Again, wouldn't trade it for the world. But putting all this stuff aside, you know, all this sales training and sales leadership and my success in sales, I had the honor of meeting Rick Grosso in person in 2011 when I was first getting recognized as Salesman of the Year. And we went out to dinner. And if you know Rick, he always wore his Robert Graham shirts. He has solid gold Rolex watches. He had a smile on his face so wide he could put a banana in there sideways.
Yeah.
And he's sharing his stories about traveling the world and living in Italy for 3 years, and his houses up in New York and down in Florida. He's got the dream life. And he said, I built all this by essentially sharing this wisdom with the world on a national stage, right? So I made up my mind. You talk about, you know, the power of the made up mind and thinking into results. In 2011, I made up my mind that I want to be him. I want to be Rick Grosso. So I don't just want to learn the system. I want to be Rick.
Yeah.
So I let him know early on that if and when he's ready to retire, I'm first in line to grab the baton. Like, I would love the opportunity to do what you do for the rest of my life, because I just became to fall in love with this industry, love this business, love the art of the in-home sale. And thankfully, I had my chance in 2019. Rick Grosso announced that he was retiring. He was going to be stepping down. He's doing his last ever closers camp. And it was hosted in Washington, D.C. Thankfully, Nathan Richmond allowed me to go. I booked my flight. Closers Camp, in case people don't know, is a sales training competition. Rick hosted several of these every year, and he usually had about 150 people show up. So I went there, mopped the floor with everybody, because I wanted Rick and everybody to see, like, I know this stuff better than Grosso does, right? Like, it was really important for me to be like the last ever Closers Camp champion. And then I was able to take Rick Grosso out to a nice dinner. There's a French bistro downtown Washington, D.C., because I know you like French bistros. You love wine. So I got him a few glasses of wine, really nice bottle of wine. And I told him the reason why I'm here is, first of all, I wanted to be part of your last ever Closers Camp, but I also wanted to tell you in person that I'm taking over your legacy. So Rick was always a big fan of, we don't ask for the business, we assume it, as if they've already said yes. So I figured it was only fitting to use the assumptive close on him. And his response was, I couldn't think of anybody better. And that's the origin of Grosso University. That was back in 2019. And now my mission is simple. I want to pay forward this gift that changed my life to as many people as I possibly can. And again, we call this legendary training for the modern world because it has a legendary foundational bones of the classic Rick Grosso teachings. But of course, we're continuing to evolve it and enhance it and modify it based on what's going on in the house today. So hopefully that wasn't too long-winded of an introduction.
No.
But, me is like, people like working with me because I've made a lot of the mistakes that I don't want them to make. I've done a lot of the trial and error so they don't have to, but that journey of going from a small company that was on the verge of going bankrupt to building one of the highest performing sales teams in the industry, it gives me a lot of insight as to how they can hit the road running and essentially get their sales foundation built to be rock solid so they don't have to have any setbacks. So
that's all. I mean, I knew high level a lot of things, but I didn't know that. I mean, that's awesome. I didn't, and Rick has since, unfortunately, it's passed.
Yeah.
If I'm not right.
So been about a year. I can't believe it's been about a year, but yeah. So our last owners camp that we did a massive tribute to Rick, and I will never not be grateful for the gift he gave me, and I hope to have an impact on the industry just as he did. He left a heck of a legacy, impacted literally millions of people. So that's the goal.
Yeah,
about a lot.
So foundationally, though, things are similar to what he, I guess, if you will, taught, implemented, and you've just made some tweaks.
Yeah. So a lot of people laugh because I have an 11-step sales process that I teach. And all I did is I took Rick Grosso's 10-step system and I added preparation as step 1. Because one thing I discovered in the industry is there wasn't enough training and there wasn't enough coaching on what a sales rep can do to optimize their health, their wellness, their mindset, get their morning routine, really dialed in, do their research, dress to impress, just get in the right state of mind. So then when I get into my lead and knock on the door, I already have that positive momentum and I can perform at my best. So, but the rest of it, the 10-step system that Rick Grosso trained is the same framework. And of course, we've expanded it and built upon it, which that's a message I want everyone to take away from this too, is any sales process, you could have 8 steps, 10 steps, 100 steps, whatever it is. You want to think of that as your foundation. Now, of course, a foundation to any structure is mandatory. You can't build a house. I often refer to the Sears Tower, the Willis Tower in Chicago. So it's a 1,450 foot skyscraper, one of the tallest buildings in the world. The foundation is 2 million cubic feet of cement. It's got 100 concrete cylinders that go 100 feet underground. So strong foundation, but just with a 100-foot foundation, they got a 1,450-foot skyscraper. Now that's an impressive building, and that's really all you're seeing, right, is the skyscraper. But beneath the surface, if that foundation weren't there, you wouldn't have the building. So the sales foundation has to be rock solid, but that's not where the journey ends.
Yeah.
That's where it begins. So at the very beginning, the very least, I need to learn the system, but then I need to continue to build upon it over and over throughout the dawn of humanity, and it never ends. So Rick always told me, he's like, school's never out for the closer. What often happens, I'm sure you see this all the time, Joe, is a sales rep will learn the system in the beginning. They'll have some success, and then they throw the training book in the garbage. They're like, I get it. I got it all figured out now. I have all the answers. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? And I think one of my greatest superpowers, maybe this is because I struggle all through school, is I always feel like I have to learn something new every day. I just have a daily sense of urgency to learn something new, because I feel like if I'm not growing, I'm dying, right? I feel like I'm going to fall behind. And I think you'll find this to be funny. So we have an online training platform. We got a lot of our video content on. And every year I'll pull a report on who watched the most video content of anyone in the country. And in 2024, I watched 2 to 3 times more video content on our platform than anyone in the country. I spend more time reading my own training than anyone in the country. It's like,
I was about to say, you created the content, didn't you?
Exactly. You would think I wouldn't have to, but the thing is a brain is a bucket with a hole in the bottom. If you're not constantly filling your mind with knowledge, and again, relearning the same things, but trying to fine tune and get a little bit better, you're going to digress. You're going to get worse. And then bad habits start forming. And then you hit a wall and you're like, what happened? Well, you got this habitual reinforcement of bad habits and you stop learning. So you actually go backwards. And all of a sudden you're so far off in left field, you don't even know where you started. So for me, like even like when I have a conversation with someone like yourself, if I'm getting on a podcast or if I'm going to be doing a keynote presentation, I'll watch a ton of my trainings and start reading some of my stuff just in preparation for that. Because I want to make sure I'm filling up my bucket. Like it's all fresh in my mind now. I'm sharp. I'm ready to go. So it's really a good lesson.
Why? So I came in the industry in 2007.
Yep.
Was my first year. And it wasn't even an option to not be, we say on model, on a system, on the process. And matter of fact, that first model I was ever taught started was Grosso.
That's awesome.
I still have one of the original probably manuals from that.
It's amazing to me how many people have been impacted by that man. And now with this passing, I'm even learning it more. I actually had a story. There was a home show I was at. I was actually at the Win the Storm event last year, and I had a booth set up. And our company's called Grosso University. And I had this gentleman that came up to our booth, and he just stopped, and he's staring at the Grosso University logo. He looks at me, and he starts crying. I'm like, what did I do? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Did I offend you in some way? He's like, he's telling stories about Rick and how he used to be close friends, and they ran leads together and all this stuff. And he just thought it was the coolest thing ever that someone named a company after Rick. But that was just another person that Rick Grosso touched in his life and his career that had such a deep impact. It literally brought the guy to tears that his name is being carried on. And but yeah, that's awesome to hear that you were also
that was our foundation. But again, it was mandatory. Yeah. And it seems like that's harder and harder. I don't know. Then it wasn't even an option. Now it seems like it's like pulling teeth. And you see it in the group all the time where there's people like, I don't like scripted selling and all this stuff. And I'm just like, man, and I love your analogy to the paint by number. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the way I respond to that every time is, now let me ask you a question, Joe. Do you like watching movies?
Yeah. Right.
Okay. What percentage of every movie is scripted?
100.
Only all of them, right?
Yeah.
Even reality TV is scripted. Even, let's be honest, a lot of the stuff we see in politics is scripted, right?
Yeah.
So now, why are movies scripted? Why is it important that there's a script to a movie?
Predictable?
If there wasn't a script, let's say it was all just improv, off the cuff, guess what? Movies would suck ass. They'd be the worst. So now, when you see the final motion picture, though, it doesn't sound scripted. As a matter of fact, I don't know about you, but I watch a movie that I know is scripted, but because of how it's delivered, it brings me literally to tears.
Yeah.
Right? So how does that happen? Well, when they first get the script handed to them and they're, in the round table discussion and they're reading it, they sound robotic. They're just reading the script. But what the actor does is they actually learn that script so well, and they focus on the 93% of communication, which is not the words on the paper. It's how you deliver the message that really matters, right? So they work on that 93%, their facial expressions, their body language, their tonality, their tone, their pitch, their rate, and they make that script become their voice, right? It becomes genuine and authentic. Now you're in a position where you can deliver that script. No one's going to have success regurgitating a script like a robot. And I fully agree. When you first learn it, it does sound robotic. However, if you encourage all your sales reps just to wild, wild west, go and shoot from the hip with no foundation, no plan, no script, not knowing exactly what they're going to say before they're going to say it, you're setting themselves up for failure, because a human being cannot think about what they're supposed to say and simultaneously truly listen to their prospect, simultaneously control their own disruptive emotions. You can't do all this stuff at once. So the only way I can truly listen to my prospect is if I already know what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it. Now I can shut that voice in my head off instead of waiting for my turn to talk, right? I'm actually going to listen and just really key into my customer and listen to them and watch their facial expressions. Make sure I'm controlling my tonality, the emotion of the sale. So there's a lot to it, but scripts, to me, again, I agree with you that they should be mandatory, at least like the foundational scripts. Not that everything the sales rep does throughout the whole thing should be scripted, but there should be foundational scripts intertwined within your step selling system to keep that salesperson accountable for doing it correctly, staying on track. So,
do you mind me asking? And I mean, I don't want to ever give up what obviously your business is, but when you say foundational, I agree. I think I have a concept in my own head, but like, what do you typically see are those foundational scripts that you would say are like, hey, these are, I would assume entry is one, but like, what do you typically see, if you don't mind? And you don't have to give up all the goods, but in your take.
Yeah. So the moment that salesperson makes that first impression, because again, that people make buying decisions within seconds of meeting you, right? So I need to make sure I have a real good first impression. So that door approach, the gaining entry into the door, there's all scripts and methodology to it. I made sure that if a salesperson had a customer who's trying to cancel at the door, CAD, that they had a nice, well-rehearsed response to overcome that consistently. Because a lot of times if someone tries to cancel right at the front door, it throws you off immediately. Your fight or flight response gets activated, and then the sales rep just sits there and stumbles over their words, and they get steamrolled. They literally talk themselves out of the sale. So that's why having a script in those cases is important. Or like when you walk into the house, Joe, and a customer inevitably hits you with an objection. So fill in the blank options. Like, we're never going to make a decision on the first night. If your window's over $500 a window, we can terminate this meeting. If you don't do full bath remodels, you might as well leave, So
right.
Do you have a well-rehearsed way to overcome that so you can get into the education segment, because people make new decisions based on new information? Well, if I talk myself out of the sale within the first 20 seconds of meeting them and don't give myself and themselves the chance to get educated, that's not going to be beneficial. So I make sure that sales reps have well-rehearsed scripts in their arsenal for when they go to the front door, gaining entry. Because, that's one thing a lot of salespeople don't want to admit is they control and influence their own demo rate. This whole concept, they think it's all the marketing department's fault if they're not getting into demos. No, there are some cases where that might be true, but more often than not, it's your ability to gain entry, overcome the inevitable obstacles that are going to occur and the objections that get thrown at you early on, and be able to sidestep, ignore them, and get into the process of educating them, right? So then you get to the kitchen table. We have scripts for setting the tone for the whole sales encounter. Because ultimately, one thing Rick Grosso always preached to me is you cannot close somebody unless they're comfortable and relaxed. And their guard may be up slightly when you first enter that house, right?
Yeah.
So you make sure that, mind like a parachute works best when it's open. So I want to deliver some sort of introduction, set the terms of the meeting to get them to lower their defenses, open up their minds, and get comfortable and relaxed so we can have a productive and meaningful conversation. So that's scripted. Then we have a needs assessment. There's actually, I used to role play and script how a sales rep asks questions in the discovery so it doesn't sound like an interrogation.
Yeah.
We used to role play this. Now, one thing I like thinking about, Joe, you like stand-up comedy, right?
I do.
So why do you like stand-up comedy?
That's a good question. Funny. It's
Laughter,
engaging.
Right?
Yeah.
It's this. You're laughing. It makes you feel good. You're getting the neurotransmitters fired up, right? Laughter truly is the best medicine. I love stand-up comedy. Now, what percentage of stand-up comedy is scripted?
Ooh. Probably a good chunk of it.
Just like that movie we were talking about.
Yeah.
So if a comedian is preparing for a 60-minute masterful presentation from the stage, it'll take them typically 1 year to prepare for that. Because they don't just memorize what they're going to say. They work on how they're going to perfectly deliver this with the right timing, the right tonality, right? So that joke lands. And then they even write into their script when the crowd's going to laugh. They write in laughter into their presentation. And when they ask the crowd a question, they'll plan out in advance, what are the most probable answers I could get from the crowd, like predictably, because human beings are pretty predictable nowadays. And based on the answer, they have a couple different jokes and pathways they can pivot off so it looks like improv. But guess what? That's not improv. It's planned improv. And this really was shocking to me. The first time I really got exposed to this was stand-up comedy. My wife and I love Kevin Hart, for example. I think he's one of the funniest human beings in the world.
Yeah.
And we got the chance to go see his show in Long Beach, California. And first time I saw him, we were up in the nosebleeds. But I laughed so hard my face hurt. Like my face literally hurt from laughing. And then fast forward a few months later, this was his Irresponsible tour, in case anyone's seen it, but really fun.
Yeah.
So I got a chance to go see the same show again. And the reason why for me it was a no-brainer is this time it was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, close to where I live. And it was front row seats with a chance to meet and greet Kevin Hart backstage. I'm like, wow, that sounds amazing, right?
I'm in.
So now one thing that I thought about the first time I saw Kevin Hart is, man, that guy can improv. Like the way he was feeding off the audience and the questions and how he responded, like there was a lot of improv there. And then I got to see the exact same show from the same person the second time. And guess what was identical the second time around? The improv. Yeah. Everything, like his animation, the way he asked questions, the way he interacted with the audience, it was 100% identical. And that's one thing salespeople have to remind themselves of is they've never seen this before. They've never seen your presentation before. So why does all this matter? Why am I going down a rabbit hole here? Is a sales rep has the ability, and this is what companies need to role play, to plan in advance what questions they're going to ask and how they're going to ask them. And then we mastermind together. What are the most probable answers we're going to get from our prospects? And based on those responses, what additional open-ended or layering questions can I ask to get more information? Because prospects are just like icebergs. 80% of what I need to get to the root of is beneath the surface. And if I'm not prepared in advance with that skill set of being able to ask layering open-ended questions, not just surface level yes or no closed-ended questions, I'm talking like really relevant, hard-hitting, impactful, open-ended questions to get that prospect to open up. And that's where the magic occurs. So this is stuff we role play out, and I actually script out those questions in advance. I think that's really important. Don't get me wrong. You want the conversation to unfold naturally. And there's an element of being a chameleon in the house. I used to train a lot of salespeople on, the family, occupation, recreation, motivation, getting to know them personally, professionally, what they do for their occupation, recreation, what hobbies, things they like. If you got commonality between the both of you, that's absolute gold in the house because people want to buy from people who are like them.
Yeah.
So that there are some scripted elements, but also we role play how to make sure we have a natural conversation. Now, this is important because early in a sales encounter, I want to get the homeowner used to and comfortable talking. I want to get them used to talking. And if I ask enough questions and I get them talking enough, I activate what's called the self-disclosure loop. I don't know if you hear this in trainings nowadays or you teach it yourself.
No, I love it.
Yeah, human beings get pleasure from revealing personal information. They actually get neurotransmitters fired up, the dopamine hits, serotonin, right? So they get rewarded from personal revelations. So if I ask these questions early in a sales encounter and I get the homeowner to open up and activate that self-disclosure loop, then they start revealing the real good stuff, their fears, some of the hidden objections that may be beneath the surface, what they're truly looking for honestly out of the right contractor, the right project, what it is. If I'm just asking surface level questions and closed-ended questions and this whole thing's an interrogation, I'm never going to be able to pave out what we call the roadmap to the sale. So that stuff takes a lot of rehearsal, takes a lot of practice, role-playing, and having some framework for how I ask these questions in advance. What do most people do? They go into the house, shoot from the hip, wing it. No real plan as to how they're going to have a meaningful conversation. And that 80% of the information they need to effectively influence them is skipped over.
Yeah.
So again, a very long-winded answer to your question there, but now getting into the different steps of the sale, we have transitions from one step to the next step to the next step to make sure that this masterful presentation has a smooth transition from step to step and make sure that I'm able to maintain control over the sales encounter. So like, for example, how I transition from my introduction to my needs assessment, there's actually a scripted way I do that. How I transition from the needs assessment to the inspection to make sure the homeowners are present. They come along with me. We make this an interactive experience. After the inspection's over, there's scripts that we deliver and how we get them committed to doing the work. Whether it be with us or any of our fine competition, getting this project is definitely something we need to get taken care of sooner rather than later. Wouldn't you agree? I appreciate the opportunity to help you with that. You're going to absolutely love what I have to show you. So there's actually scripts to how we get those commitments. So then transitioning into the company story, getting the commitments throughout the company story, the trial closes and tie downs, how I get the major commitment at the end of my company story, that if I can design a solution they love and we can exceed their expectations on affordability, we would have earned the right to ask for their business when they're ready. There's scripts to that. So throughout the sales process, during the step, the transitions, the major commitments, the trial close, the tie downs, reps need to have a foundational framework on how to do that properly. And again, the goal is for them to build upon that over time and make it become their voice, so it comes across as genuine and authentic. So,
yeah, that's you brought up some good points. I was going to ask you, when you saw Kevin Hart the second time, was it as funny as the first?
Absolutely. My face hurt just as much.
Right?
Yeah, I was laughing my face off. Because again, even if I heard every word he said the first time, because again, I picked up a lot of those cues, but I still don't remember every joke, with Total Recall. But yeah, it was just as funny. Even though I knew exactly what he was going to do before he was going to do it, the way he delivers that stuff, you can't help but laugh over and over.
Now, I will say, the reason why I bring this up too is historically, I've talked about this myself, is, same way with a movie, same way with comedy, right? At some point there is a turn where it's maybe it's not as funny because it's coming. And the reason why I bring that up is because obviously naturally in our business, first sit close is you're going to have the best opportunity when everything's at the height, the emotion, but as you see a movie 4, 5, 6 times, it doesn't, those scenes don't become as much of a tearjerker, or his punchlines maybe not as much.
For sure. Yeah. Emotions are always going to be the highest that first time, 100%. And this is why it's so important for us to empower and educate salespeople how to strike when the iron's hot, get the business on that first visit, earn their business, right? No one's going to give you anything, but you definitely want to make sure you're doing everything and anything in your power when emotions are at their highest, when you have the ability to make that first impression. You got like the magic fairy dust floating in the air in that first sales encounter. You got to keep that going, because that's why they're going to buy from you. Is not because of the logic of it all. It's because of how they feel, how they're going to feel once they own it, but how they feel in that moment, right? And if they feel absolutely amazing about it, if you made them feel special, you made them feel understood, you created high levels of need, want, desire for what you're there to offer, really more often than not, and this is what we preach extensively at Grosso University, the only objection that should be left more often than not is affordability, simply fitting it into a budget that works for them and their lifestyle. But price should not be the objection. Shop around should not be the objection. Again, it happens with the best of us, but more often than not, it's fitting into a budget because they want to move forward. Yeah. This is why, people have the wrong idea about like this one call close thing, that it's high pressure. I don't care if you do 2, 3, 4, 5 closes. High pressure is lack of technique. And it's typically a result of trying to force somebody to do something they don't want to do. Nobody's going to get any pleasure trying to strong arm somebody to buy something that they don't want. So if they don't feel right about it, if they don't truly desire what it is that you're offering, you're going to be a high pressure salesperson regardless. This is why Rick always preach, the best close in the world is a masterful presentation, because the homeowner should have high levels of want and desire for what it is that you're there to offer. So then we're at the negotiating table, they truly want it. You're far less likely to get hit with all these other excuses and get down to the true origin of what we need to is just fitting into their budget, making it affordable. So
are you seeing I love how you kind of gave it an acronym. I personally have never heard it, but the CAD and the ability to overcome, just initial resistance. To me, that seems like a pretty, even more than ever, critical step.
Yeah, absolutely. And some that most salespeople are completely unequipped to handle, just because they don't take into account that maybe I should have program rebuttals. And this is why I want to say this. This is important for everyone to keep watching this. When you are training your salespeople, a lot of times we end up just focusing on the red carpet, gravy train types of scenarios where the customer welcomes you with open arms. They got the cookies and donuts prepared. They just so happen to have 3-4 hours set aside for this in-home consultation, and they're greeting you with a smile. They're like, Joe, if we can get this thing done for under $40,000, we'll buy today. Let's go inside and begin the purchasing process, right? Yeah. So that happens on the 5th of Neverwary. So that's not going to happen. So we need to make sure that we're training into our salespeople obstacle immunity and the right skill set so they can overcome the inevitable curveballs and obstacles that are going to get thrown at them in every sales encounter. So part of our role playing in the initial training, we had a door in our sales training room. I would have the salesperson role play knocking on the door, delivering their introduction, set the tone, and I would throw a curveball at them. I'd throw a cancellation attempt. And I want to hear you overcome this cancellation attempt confidently with a well-rehearsed response. Now, there's not like necessarily one answer to how to respond, because again, everyone has their own variation of this. Of course, I had a scripted way that I wanted to learn at first, but I want to hear, is this polished? Is it well-rehearsed? Can you overcome this confidently without getting steamrolled?
Yeah.
And then sales reps develop obstacle immunity, right? So you're in the military?
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for your service. Now, in the military, they don't train the sunshine and rainbow scenarios. So they're going to train on realistic scenarios so you can be mentally and physically prepared for the reality of life, what goes out there, and make sure that you don't have your disruptive emotions prevent you from executing the mission at a high level. You have to develop that obstacle immunity. And the same thing holds true in sales. Now, war obviously is terrifying. A lot of people underestimate how much people are scared of rejection. Rejection is terrifying. And people avoid rejection like the plague. Some people fear it more than death. Right?
Yeah.
So to be proficient at sales, I got to be able to go long-headed into rejection without allowing my disruptive emotions from taking over. So I can basically have the outcome I desire more often than not. But it comes from being prepared. You know, like they say in the military, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war, the less you bleed in battle. Yep. You got to drill and train those things.
Yeah, that's a good, a valid point there. The other thing that I heard this the other day, I can't think of the guy. He's an ex-CIA guy, Andrew something, a young guy. But anyway, he has a podcast. I think it's called like Everyday Spy. Okay. But he says in the CIA, they would create conversation maps. Similar concept, right? They would pre-meeting a target, say at a bar. You know, they would have, the response, what the potential responses to each question could be. And they would have that map eventually in their head.
Yeah.
And prepared, because obviously in that world too, the minute that you don't have a response or it isn't conversational, flags start to go up.
Yeah. So obviously the cancellation at the door is a big one. The objections that customer is inevitably going to throw at them, because I'm sure you've seen this on ride-alongs. I've seen sales reps on ride-alongs that do the following. They're on a window lead and they walk into the house, and I'm observing, and the customer hits them with a very typical objection. If your windows are over $400 a window, we can terminate this meeting. And the sales professional says, well, our windows are a little bit more than that, but you get what you pay for, right? And then the customer, well, there's the door.
Yeah.
So they talk themselves out of the sale immediately. So we actually created an acronym to help people remember this, but it's called AIM: acknowledge, ignore, and move on. So acknowledge the objection. Hey, I appreciate what you're saying. Ignore the objection. We actually have multiple different options we're going to present to you. We actually have a good, better, best offering, and we can actually show you a window that's less than that. Let's go to the kitchen table so we can figure out the most economical solution to your problems, and then, whatever way, but we got to be able to a lot of times ignore those objections early on, because these homeowners don't have enough information to make an informed decision yet.
I got to give you credit, because I either stole it from you, but I think actually you told it to me in person. So maybe I didn't steal it. But at the end of the day, I stole it. And this comes up often. Full bathroom leads.
Yes.
I know companies that are going to go out of business because they don't treat every lead as a full bathroom lead.
Yeah.
Right. In the one-day bath arena. Obviously if they're full remodel, great. But how many people, and I just remember there was something, just handling those, because that initially I started my career in exteriors, then had, and then with bathrooms, it was new to me, where people are like, yeah, we want a full bathroom. And in my head at first, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense to me. Who wouldn't, right? Because they didn't know. Like you said, new information gives a new decision.
Yes.
But that was a big one. And I just had a conversation with a guy yesterday about this. And I kind of indirectly told him, I was like, your business you're going to go out of business because of demo rate if you don't learn how to address that early and often.
And that's such an easy one to overcome, right? So
Yeah.
one thing we have to remind ourselves of, and salespeople need to remind themselves of, is that homeowner is not the expert. They may have done some research on the subject, but they're not an expert. And what I mean by that is a lot of them don't necessarily know exactly how to remodel a bathroom the correct way. Now, hopefully you are in a position where you've researched your product, your service. I think all salespeople should become experts at what it is they're there to offer. But the way I would overcome that, if I'm a one-day bath person and they say, do you remodel the full bathroom? Because we told the person on the phone, if you don't remodel the full bath, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
I would say, absolutely, John and Mary, we can help you with that. That's why I'm here, to help you design the bathroom of your dreams. Do you have a kitchen table? We can go out where we can discuss this.
Yeah.
So I didn't say yes or no. I said, we can help you with that. I'm going to help you design the bathroom of your dreams. And the way I'm going to help them do this is by educating them that where any successful bathroom renovation begins is with that wet area of the bathroom. That's the design template in which the entire rest of your bathroom is built upon. And once you have that wet area installed and established and it's beautiful, now you're in a position where you can come back with the right color swatches for your flooring, your paint swatches, all these things. And of course, we educate them through this whole process. So the finished product is exactly what you want it to be. But we have to understand that they're not thinking this the second you show up. They don't know that the average bathroom renovation usually has 7 different trades involved in it. You got your HVAC guys, you got your electricians, you got your certified plumbers, you got your drywall, the flooring, all these different companies. And just like we're here getting vetted out by you, I'm sure that homeowner would love the opportunity to make sure that those people are professionals.
Yeah.
Instead of just throwing their money at a general contractor for 30, 40 grand for a full bathroom model, and inevitably they're going to sub it out to the lowest bidder to maximize their profit margins. You have no clue who's going to even come out here. But I would literally map this out for all my customers. Here's how a bathroom actually gets remodeled from start to finish. And here's all the trades involved. And here's exactly the questions you need to ask and what you need to look for. Now I'm a trusted advisor. Now I'm a guidance counselor. And now they're going to ask me things like, how would you handle this, Dominic? And now I know I'm in a position of trust where they're going to take my advice as, more of the holy gospel versus resisting it. So,
yeah. It was definitely you. I mean, cause it was all new to me and I was like, oh man, I don't know. Can this even be done? You start questioning, like, is this even real? Like, they're all full bathroom leads. And you were like, yeah, every one of them's going to be.
Yeah, and one thing, so I did acrylic systems, right? A lot of people sold the BCI. We were luxury bath dealers, and we constantly got hit with the real tile objection right out of the gate. Do you offer real tile? And I would handle it the exact same way. Say, John and Mary, absolutely, we can definitely help you with that. Do you have a kitchen table we can set where we can discuss the options? And the reason why I say absolutely we can definitely help you with that is because we can help them by educating them on the pros and cons of going with a tile and grout system, and guide that homeowner down the path of coming to their own conclusion that maybe it's not tile that we're looking for, it's the look of tile that we really like. And if I can get the true look and feel of real tile without the maintenance issues, that's a win-win. But I can't solve that right out of the gate. So too many salespeople right out of the gate be like, no, I don't offer tile. And then the customer's like, there's the door.
Yeah.
So the whole point is, like, some of the best salespeople I've ever seen and trained in my life are the best at controlling the conversation, ignoring objections prematurely, and allowing that homeowner to get educated so they can give their informed consent at the negotiating table later on.
Do you think it's because we're attached so much to the close?
Yeah.
That if it doesn't look like it's a clear path, that we derail?
Yeah. So this is what Dan Coombsbury, our head sales trainer at Grosso University, says all the time. Closing is important. Lord knows we're big fans of closing, but the best close is the right open.
Yeah.
So if I don't open this conversation up correctly and get it started and going in the right direction, that close is going to be very difficult. I don't know about you, Joe, but I'd rather have the close be the natural conclusion. I'd rather have that be enjoyable for both parties involved and have that be the easy part. That's my preference. Yeah. So this whole notion that, obviously you have to be able to get through the no's, right? You should have a closing roadmap that ensures you can get through those 3, 4, 5, 6 no's consistently. That is important because that truthfully is when most people buy. But preferably you should have a front loading phase to where I'm doing such a masterful presentation that when I'm in the close, I'm on the green, I'm on the dance floor, and all I got to do is tap this thing in to get a birdie putt.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be at the close trying to earn their business, hacking it out of the woods or hacking it out of the sand trap, right?
Yeah.
Playing army.
No, it's a good point.
So.
But it's funny you say that, because I think there still is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's the setting the proper expectations with reps is like, hey, this is the prereq, right? You got to have a masterful presentation, but also be prepared that there are going to be, it's human nature to, no, just looking, right? I go into the store for a pair of shoes. If I'm there, especially if I'm going anytime I have free and I'm going to buy a new pair of shoes, like I'm there to buy.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to say I'm just looking because it's a reflex. It's human nature. So you have to be kind of prepared. I was talking to a friend of mine one time. He's a buyer for the federal government, and they actually trained them to say, no matter what, that the price is high.
Yep.
Regardless, just because they know, they almost want to, it's like a flinch test. And I'm like, what the world? Are you kidding me? He's like, yeah, we do it all the time.
Yeah. So I teach this a lot in my sales training, that a lot of times salespeople unfortunately give in to whatever number a homeowner throws at them as the holy gospel, as, it has to be 10 grand or it's no deal. For some reason, they think in their mind, like that's a real objection. Okay. Now, the thing that I teach and preach is that the homeowners will always be willing to spend a lot more than you think, and a lot more than they tell you they're willing to spend, especially if they're good negotiators, right? So like when I bought my first house here in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, the house was listed at $399. So nice ranch house, 5 acres, we live out in the country. And I was willing to pay $399, full transparency. If they said take it or leave it, I would have taken it. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But I also like negotiating, right? So, and my aunt was my realtor at the time. So I came in at $350. So I undercut their offer by almost 50 grand. And my aunt was not a fan of that. She's like, you're going to insult these people and piss them off. And they're going to say, we're going to go on to the next person. But they countered at $389. So they dropped their price by 10 grand. So I'm like, that's pretty interesting. I wonder what else I can get out of these people,
Right.
So then I increased my offer by, I went up to 360. So I bumped my offer by 10. And they, unfortunately for them, they came down to 379. So already I made 2 offers. They dropped 20 grand off their price. They didn't have to do that at all, by the way.
Yeah.
If they would have been, more sticking to their guns on the price, I would have bought much higher. But then my aunt's like, you better take that offer, because if you do another offer, you're going to turn them away. I'm like, well, I don't need the house. There's other houses that are out there.
Right.
Then I came in at 370. They cover the closing costs. So I increased by another 10. We ended at 370, 3.5. They covered the closing costs, and I bought the house. So the moral of that story is they really screwed themselves, because if they would have been more diligent, sticking to their opening price and built more value in it, instead of just discounting, they would have gotten at least 20 grand more for that house, right?
So you said something funny there that I picked up on. You didn't need the home.
I didn't need the home, yeah.
If I'm a sales rep in the home, I don't need the sale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right?
Selling
out of desperation is the worst thing you can do. So selling as if, and again, it sounds counterproductive, but one of the best ways to sell is if you could care less if they buy from you, right? Because it's almost like taking it away and makes people desire it even more. And the opposite of that is if I go into a house with commission breath, selling out of desperation because you're desperate for a sale, people are going to pick up on that immediately, and it's going to turn them off. So
I think it's so I compare it to dating, at least when I was a single person, right? If you're super needy, they just and I tried it, and then I got closed by my wife. I tried to give her the Heisman for like a week or two, and then I picked up the phone. It's like, yeah, maybe we should make this work. You come crawling back, but
your wife asked you out?
What's that?
Your wife asked you out?
No, I did. She actually will tell you she did not want to go out on a date with me based on the pictures she saw.
Yeah.
She's like, I thought you didn't know what I was going to see, but again, I tried to play the role of like, I don't want to get into a serious thing. Right.
Yeah.
And she called my bluff. She was like, fair enough. She's like, I'm at a different stage in my life type thing. But you know what I mean? So what happened though? If it's meant to be, 2 weeks later, you call back and it's like,
yeah,
gotcha. but she could have caved, and you know what I mean? Like things like that. But same way in the home, if you come off needy, we almost induce, I guess what I'm getting at is we almost induce our own objections.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Life is a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to share this because my wife did ask me out. I used to be pretty good looking, had hair, you know?
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, so we've been together for 24 years. But
congrats, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. She very much initiated that, and she closed me on it. But yeah, I mean, for me, in the terms of sales, like I see that all the time where reps go into that house with commission breath. And again, customers can feel that, you know, basically whatever you're feeling internally, whatever's going on, you're going to radiate that vibration to your customers, and it's going to make them feel uneasy. So I wanted to share this story. I had a sales rep. He was a $3 million producer, just a killer, consistent top performer. And inevitably, like it happens with even the best of us, he hit a wall in sales and went a week without a sale. Now, for a top performer, going a week without a sale is like a life sentence. It's like life is ending. Literally, I don't know what to do with myself. And I was talking to the salesperson over the phone, and he's venting, right? We call it blowing out the lines. So sometimes you got to vent, you got to blow out the lines to clear your head. And I was encouraging that, okay, just tell me what's going on. And this sales rep was shouting, talking about how pissed off he is that he hasn't closed and he's getting angry. And I could just hear the tension in his voice. I'm like, well, that's interesting. I just want to ask you to be honest. When the customer is objecting to you, what are you feeling inside? Like, how do you feel in that moment? When they say no to you, so you deliver your first close, they say no, what are you feeling? He's like, I'm pissed off. Like, so you could be saying all the right things and think you're following the program to a T, but if you're pissed off internally, if you're getting upset, the homeowner feels that, because sales is a transference of emotion as much as anything. And you're kicking them into fight or flight. You're actually coming off confrontational. And as soon as their fight or flight response is activated, the deal is off.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is take a deep breath, right? Maybe work out in the morning, clear your mind, get in a positive state, go into that house. Nothing's a big deal. And this sales rep happened to be a really good chess player. So I'm like, let me ask you a question. When you play chess, are you like 4, 5, 6 moves ahead? And he used pridefully. He's like, I'm 6 moves ahead. I'm like, okay, so when you're playing chess with your opponent and they make a move, are you getting pissed off or upset, or are you just all ready to go to make your next move anyway? It's like, yeah, I just make my next move. I'm like, sales is no different. So you go through step 1 in the close, the customer makes their move. You should, in theory, be 4 or 5 moves ahead at the negotiating table. You already know where you're going to go. So you have all the ability in the world to control your disruptive emotions. Nothing's a big deal. You got this. But take a deep breath, pause for a second, control your emotions, and then respond, and you'll be fine. So then that's all that sales rep needed to hear to kind of get back on track. But that was very much, he was just starting to get desperate. He was starting to lose control over disruptive emotions, going into every house with commission breath. And even a top performer with that type of mentality is going to hit a wall.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was going to ask you in general, what is your take historically have you found with slumps?
Yeah, so slumps happen to the best of us, right? And the way I define how that happens is the habitual reinforcement of bad habits, okay? And this is why I'm such a big advocate for learning every day, because what ends up happening, I say the worst thing that can happen to any salesperson is having success doing it wrong. That's one of the worst things that can happen, okay? So, but we all experience this. You ever go into a house and you show a slide on your presentation and you get a negative reaction from the homeowner? Yeah. Like, I don't need to see that crap. You can skip over this. Just give us a short and sweet and get to the price, right? Yep. So what ends up happening is that gets to that sales rep's head and they're like, yeah, maybe I should skip over that. There's really no point. So then on the next sales encounter, they deliver a close or a certain word track and it doesn't land well or it doesn't work. So then the salesperson's like, well, that doesn't work. So then they start skipping over that slide and skipping over this close and omitting this word track and shortening this part of their product presentation. And weeks and months and years of doing that, inevitably what ends up happening is they hit a wall, they get into a slump because they have formed a bunch of these bad habits. It kind of sneaks up on you. And they don't even know how it happened. I wanted to share this with you, Joe. One of the most common things I hear when I do sales trainings with groups is, Dominic, I can't believe how many things you brought back to the service that I know I used to do, but for one reason or the other, haven't done in years. And I'm definitely going to reincorporate that into my sales performance. So it happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
How do we solve this? We solve this by making sure daily I'm studying the system, that I'm reading the methodology, that I'm role playing, practicing, watching videos, listening to audiobooks, whatever it is. But I need to constantly be learning, because the brain is a bucket with a hole in the bottom. And I don't care how good you are. I'm guilty of this myself. I've had bad habits form. I found myself skipping over things because the homeowner said that this is pointless to even talk about. So we got to stay disciplined and make sure that that foundation continues to be rock solid, and obviously continue to build upon it over time. So it's just gradual.
I think there were.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think there was a lot of bad habits. I think people are, if they're honest with themselves, especially during the pandemic, right? Because it was just a little bit easier.
Yeah. We saw a lot of that. We had to unprogram and reprogram after the pandemic, because people were having success doing it wrong, a lot of success doing it wrong. And that kind of reinforces bad habits. And then when things get back to normal, it's not like things got worse. They just got back to a normal state. Now they're hitting those walls, and it's really getting back to basics. We got to sharpen that axe and make sure that we're mastering the basic fundamentals that got us here. So I wanted to share that what every sales leader should mandate from all of their salespeople, when they get to what they define as like the apex of knowing the system, so they get through the training, they're coming out and having success, they're still very systematic and they're kicking butt and taking names. You should mandate that every salesperson has a video recording of their entire presentation on video. Because one thing I don't see enough of, Joe, is like salespeople listening to themselves, watching themselves, and fine-tuning their communication skills. I spend an embarrassing amount of time watching myself on video, because I'm always trying to fine-tune my communication. How is my hand gestures? I mean, is it too crazy? I got Italian in me, so a lot of times I end up throwing my hands around like a maniac. How is my eye, like my eyes, my facial expressions, my tone, my pitch, my rate, is it on point? Do I have too many filler words? But people need to start watching themselves. But this is important, because if they ever do hit a slump, they can always refer back to where they were when they're having success and be like, oh, when did I stop doing that? And in some cases, depending on how long this time is gone, you won't even recognize that person on video. So that's one advantage I have, is I'm constantly watching myself on video, constantly trying to fine tune. I'll have other people watch my videos and tell me what they like, what they don't like. My wife is great at that. I could think I did the best presentation of all time. She's like, that was pretty good, honey, but here's what you need to improve on next time. This. And I'm like, oh shit.
Jesus. Yeah. Right. Yeah. There's I'll add to that. That's been helpful for me, at least, is you can replay it with just just to hear it without any visual, then do it muted just to watch the visual. Because believe it or not, our brains will still pick up on the audio if it's on there, but if it's muted, and then it's really eye-opening if you can get the transcript.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my goodness, there's 3 different ways to, if you're really trying to level up your game in presenting, that was an eye-opener to me.
Right. So how many podcasts have you done?
We're at like 60 or 70 now.
That's amazing. So am I like number 70 here? Is that what this is?
I probably should do that next time and count. It's getting up there.
So like when you did your very first podcast and you watched that, right? So what were some things that you picked up on your very first episode when you look back at that?
Probably the biggest one for me was, and it's hard with cameras, like where to look, right? And I get bad at that. But I would say the biggest one is probably talking too much, right? Like I have a lot of knowledge I'd like to share, but the whole point of this is not for me. I mean, it's for me to get from, my own selfish reasons. So it doesn't do me any good talking. And then fill it like I just did there. Filler words, right?
Yeah. So
you get so nervous. Like what I love about these is they're live, right? So there's no editing. It is what it is. And I guess that's funny. I had a good friend in the group say to me, I love it, but I want you to be, I'd rather you be more you.
Yeah. Be
like
authentic.
sometimes. Yeah. But it's tough, right? You're trying to, you're trying to come up with, extract information, obviously, as best you can in a conversation.
Right.
And you're trying to be perfect, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I can relate to that. So I have a podcast as well. And I look back at my first episode, it's hard to watch. And one thing I did a lot the first time is while the guest is talking. So I'm in customer brain, right? I got to switch from the in-home sales.
Yeah.
So while the guest is talking loudly, I was like, and I didn't stop doing this like the whole freaking time. I'm like, it was actually really disruptive to the whole conversation. So watching that, so I'm like, okay, next episode, I got to stop saying so much, so loudly, and like, can I pause the chicken nod for a second? So like when I do interviews now, I'm like trying to not chicken nod too much.
Yeah, it's hard.
The filler words, the ahas, so trying to bite my tongue a little bit, because to your point as well, the first episode I did, I talked way too much, and it was about the guests bringing value. But I had that same thing. But that's why it's important, though, the salespeople watch themselves. And then, of course, and you're at the front lines of all this, but we're getting all this data now from what's really happening in sales encounters. And industry-wide, the salespeople will dominate the conversation 80% of the time. And they're wondering why, when they get to the close, the customer wants nothing more for that salesperson to get out of the house as quickly as possible, right? Because you basically selfishly made it all about you and not about them, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's absolutely vital. You have to watch yourself, listen to yourself. It's uncomfortable. That's why a lot of these AI tools are such a gift nowadays. And I hope people look at this stuff as a gift, like the AI coaching and being able to record yourself. Like, put like your leadership aside for a second. If you're in-home sales, you should want nothing more than to listen to yourself relentlessly. Let's say you had no coach at all, and your coaches will love this, by the way, like self-empowerment, self-improvement. That's not what your company can do for you, what you can do for your company. That's great. But listen to yourself and ask yourself, like, would I buy from me? Would I buy from that person? And you'll learn a lot about yourself. And this is the constant, never-ending fine-tuning of your communication. And before you know it, you just become an absolute machine out there.
That's freaking awesome. Well, hey, man, I've taken up, you've given, I should say, a ton of your time, and I appreciate it. Obviously, you're in the group. What's the best way, though, to reach out to you? Is it through Facebook? Is there, where's the best way to connect directly to you?
So I'm on Facebook. They can send me a direct message. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably my biggest platform. I'm starting now to get into Instagram and TikTok. Fortunately, but unfortunately, it's kind of a necessary evil there. But you can go to grossouniversity.com. You can check us out there. We got a lot of our services. You'll see what events we have coming up. I have a podcast called Profits or Sanity. Hopefully I have the opportunity to bring you on as a guest on that show. Yeah. That would be absolutely wonderful. But also, just go to our website, check us out. And we got a lot of cool things going on. One thing I wanted to announce on your show, something I'm really proud of, is Grosso University is fully bilingual now. So we offer all of our training, consulting, coaching in Spanish and English. So whether you're an English-speaking professional, Spanish-speaking, or fully bilingual, we can put together a training solution to accommodate, pretty much anybody. So
holy crap, that's smart. Great. That's awesome. I think I saw that. I think I saw you post about that. That's freaking awesome, man. Well, hey, congrats on carrying on, and keep on making an impact, obviously in Rick's name, but your own name now too. And I know you take pride in that, and bravo to you, man. And I appreciate you coming on.
No, my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity, and congrats to everything you're doing. Again, it's an honor to be a part of this group, this network, and of course, be on your show. So
thanks, Dominic. Hope everybody has a good weekend. When you get a chance to watch it, make sure you reach out to Dominic. I know he's easily accessible, so please don't shy away from that. A lot of information. Thanks, man.
And yes, you are a closer.
There it is. I love it. Have a good one.
You as well. Thank you, Joe.
All right.